You know, sometimes the biggest secrets aren't buried in a locked vault deep underground. Sometimes they're hidden in the one place no one ever thinks to look. Plain sight. They're tucked away in a boring government contract. A single line of text on page 47 of a budget report. A signature that looks just like any other. And everyone who knows the secret is counting on one thing, that you're too busy, too distracted, or just too bored to ever notice it. This is a story about what happens when someone does notice. It starts not with a bang, but with a question. A single, quiet question asked in a stuffy, forgettable committee hearing on Capitol Hill. A question that would pull a thread, unraveling a cover-up that reached the highest levels of the FBI and a private resort in Mar-a-Lago. And it begins with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Imagine the scene. It's a standard oversight committee hearing. The cameras are on, but mostly for the C-SPAN archives. The air is thick with procedure and political jargon. On one side, you have Jasmine Crockett, known for being sharp, but today she seems particularly calm, almost serene. Across from her sits Kash Patel, a former high-level advisor in the Trump administration. He's confident, maybe a little too comfortable. He's been in rooms like this 100 times. He knows the game. Crockett leans into her microphone. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. Mr. Patel, she begins, her tone even. Why is your signature on a contract that transferred internal FBI data to a private server in Florida? Boom. It's like the air conditioning in the entire building just shut off. The low hum of the room vanishes. You can feel the oxygen leaving. Kash Patel, who was just leaning back in his chair, blinks. Once. Twice. He reaches for his glass of water, a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor in his hand. But it's too late. The question is out there. It's on the record, live-streamed and time-stamped. And Jasmine Crockett isn't just asking a question. She's laying a trap. Patel clears his throat, forces a small, dismissive smile. That was a routine administrative matter, he says, trying to wave it away. But Crockett doesn't flinch. She doesn't argue. She simply reaches into a plain blue folder on her desk. Mr. Patel, she continues, do you recall a meeting at Mar-a-Lago on February 14th? He leans forward. That was just a social visit, he says. The confidence is back, but it's brittle now. Crockett says nothing. She just taps a remote. Behind them, a massive screen flickers to life. And suddenly, the entire room is looking at a security camera still. Timestamp, February 14th. Location, a private room in Mar-a-Lago. There are 5 men at a table. And right in the middle is Kash Patel. The camera is zoomed in on the table in front of him, on a stack of papers. And on the screen, 4 words are circled in digital red. Internal Access Transfer Protocol. The room is dead silent. You can actually hear the faint buzz of the lights overhead. Crockett turns back to Patel. Her voice is still calm, but now it has an edge of steel. Is that what you call a social event, Mr. Patel? He doesn't answer. He can't. She clicks the remote again. A new image appears. A close-up of handwritten notes in the margin of that same document. The note says, Ensure access port approved discreetly. Is that your handwriting, Mr. Patel? Crockett asks. He just sits there, a statue carved from panic. You can see the muscle in his jaw tightening. This isn't an interrogation anymore. This is a public dissection. Crockett is laying out each piece of evidence, one by one, letting each one land with its full weight. The meeting, the document, the notes, and then she connects the final dot. 5 days after that social visit, Kash Patel's signature appears on the contract, the one that moves sensitive FBI data to a private server. Destination, Florida. Timing, perfect. Crockett looks up from her notes. Who, she asks, gave final clearance to that server? Patel finally speaks, his voice strained. I'm not at liberty to discuss internal security processes. But that's the tell. That's the answer. Because she didn't ask about the process. She asked who, and everyone in that room, everyone watching at home, heard the question he refused to answer. Just when you think it can't get any more intense, Crockett reaches back into that blue folder. She pulls out something else. Not a photo, not a document. An email, 2 pages, printed and slightly creased. And she reads it into the microphone. Slowly, deliberately. Make sure Patel wraps a hand off before anyone notices. Dan will cover from behind. The silence that follows is different. It's sharp, electric. Because everyone in that room, everyone in Washington, knows exactly who Dan is. There's only one Dan with that kind of power in that circle. Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent. At that time, the sitting deputy director of the FBI. This is the moment the floor gives way. The story is no longer about Kash Patel and a shady deal. It's about a conspiracy. A chain of command that goes right to the top of the Bureau, with one of its most powerful figures providing cover for a secret data transfer. In the back of the room, a reporter fires off a tweet, and the internet explodes. It's not a story anymore. It's a map of a cover-up. And this is where the story escapes the hearing room and goes nuclear. In a broadcast van just outside, a technician is supposed to hit the 5-second delay button. It's a kill switch meant for moments just like this, to stop something from going live if it gets too real. But they're too late. The clip of Crockett reading that email is already ripped, posted, and spreading like a digital wildfire. The name Dan Bongino is trending worldwide in minutes. Then the unthinkable happens. On MSNBC, in the middle of their frantic live coverage, a call comes in. It's not scheduled. It's not cleared. The producer hesitates for a second, then makes a decision and patches it through. The anchor, looking stunned, says to the camera, We're being joined on the line now by former FBI Special Agent Joseph Feinberg. And a voice comes through the airwaves, low and steady, but filled with an urgency that cuts through all the noise. I've seen that file. Feinberg says, the one Congresswoman Crockett is holding. It was never, ever supposed to leave the Bureau. The studio goes quiet. The hosts are speechless. Feinberg continues, the words pouring out of him now. I was removed from my post 3 months ago after I asked why Kash Patel, a private citizen, had been granted elevated data clearance. I never got an answer. I got a termination letter. He takes a breath. That document, that server transfer, I flagged it. I told my superiors it was a massive security breach. I was told, and I quote, to let it go. And there it is, confirmation from the inside. A decorated former agent, live on national television, risking everything to say the thing everyone was thinking, but no one could prove. The document was real. The access was special. And the system didn't just look the other way. It actively silenced the man who tried to stop it. Back on Capitol Hill, the committee chair frantically calls for a recess. But it doesn't matter. The story isn't in that room anymore. It belongs to the world now. All because one woman didn't shout. She just read. In the end, Jasmine Crockett only spoke for about 15 minutes. 15 minutes of calm, methodical, undeniable truth. No yelling, no finger-pointing. Just dates, images, and a paper trail with names written in red ink. When the last slide faded from the screen, she didn't demand resignations or call for prosecutions. She let the silence do the work. The heavy, suffocating silence of guilt. Then she reached into her folder one last time. She pulled out a single, neatly folded sheet of paper. It was handwritten. She looked out, not at Patel, not at the committee, but at the cameras, at everyone watching. And she read, this isn't about party. It's about power. Misused repeatedly. She paused, and the silence in that room felt like thunder. And it ends today, she said, with a name, not a noise. She placed the paper down on the desk, closed her folder, and leaned back. And that was it. In a world drowning in noise, in shouting matches and political theater, she chose precision. In a culture of volume, she chose weight. She knew the facts, laid out piece by piece, would be more powerful than any accusation she could ever make. She didn't just expose a secret. She held up a mirror. She showed them that someone was watching, that the fine print matters, that a signature is a promise, and that the truth, spoken quietly but with perfect clarity, can be the most explosive force on earth. The story wasn't really about Kash Patel or even Dan Bongino. It was about what happens when people in power forget that they are accountable, when they start to believe their whispers in private rooms will never be heard in the light of day. Jasmine Crockett just proved them wrong. She didn't make a sound. She just read the receipt, out loud, for everyone to hear.